And welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Step Up to the Mic. This is the place for aspiring and established speakers to take the stage, deliver their talks, and bring them directly to you. Today's featured speaker is a wonderful lady that I have had the opportunity to interview before, but not in this format. So she's here to deliver her talk. This lady is an author. She's a mom. She's a violinist. And she is the author of Lost, The Lost City of Ink and Gold. Please welcome to our show, to our stage today, folks, Brigid Kennedy.
It was 2 a.m. I was asleep when my grandmother came to me. It was not a vague impression, not a foggy dream. She was fully herself, her voice, her face, her presence. And she got right to the point, right to it, just like how she always did. And she looked straight at me and she said, "Write our story." And then she was gone. I sat up in the dark and thought about what she was asking. My great grandfather, Robert Patrick Kennedy, he was a real Irish treasure hunter. He crossed the Atlantic, braved those stormy seas, sailed down the coast of South America. And when he landed in Lima, Peru, and he was in search of the lost city of ink and gold in the depths of the Peruvian Amazon, you have to cross over a little town called Arequipa. And that's where my great grandmother was. And that's where she was born and raised, and her hacienda was. And they met when he was crossing through town, and they ended up getting married in the monastery there in Arequipa, Peru in 1910. They had a life together. They had children together, all at the same time that he was doing his expeditions into the Amazon. And then one fateful trip, he never came home. We don't quite know what happened to him in the Amazon. We don't know what he saw. We don't know what he encountered. We don't know what kept him from coming home. And that story had never been written down before. It existed only in fragments. In photographs, nobody had labeled correctly, in names that nobody could quite remember, and in history that was quietly disappearing one generation at a time. My grandmother knew that. And when she came to me at 2 a.m., she was asking me to preserve our history. There was just one problem. I was a violin teacher. I've never written a novel in my life. So I had to make a decision. And let me tell you what it feels like to be called to do something that you are completely unqualified for. It feels like standing at the edge of something enormous and being absolutely certain that you are the wrong person for this job. You run the checklist in your head. Okay, there's no writing degree. I don't have an agent. There's no publisher. There's no roadmap. No idea even where to start. Every logical argument points in one direction. This is not for you. But here's the thing. Callings are not logical. They do not check your credentials before they arrive. They do not wait until you feel ready. They come to you at 2 a.m. and they ask you a question and then they wait. So I did what I only could do. I got up out of bed and I made a pot of coffee. I sat down at my kitchen table and I started writing. And at that point, It was mostly genealogy writing, the names and the dates and the places, trying to piece together the stories that I have been told around the family table at all the special occasions and holidays. So that part wasn't so hard to write. And and as I started writing, I I knew what I was doing at that point, not because I felt qualified, but because the alternative was letting our story disappear. And I couldn't do that to my grandmother. I couldn't do that to my great grandfather and great grandmother, Robert and Eudocia. And I couldn't do that to the rest of the family that came after them and the family that's going to come after me and my daughter. The calling always knows more than you do. Your job is not to feel ready. Your job is to simply say yes. What happened next surprised me. When I started researching the real history, I discovered that my family story was not just interesting, it was extraordinary. Robert Patrick Kennedy didn't just travel to Peru. He traveled during one of the most turbulent periods in South America's history. He did not just marry Eudocia Rodriguez. He married her at the monastery of St. Catalina in Arequipa, one of the most breathtaking buildings in the world, a city within a city where Incan architecture meets Spanish colonial design. And he did not just disappear into the Amazon. He disappeared during an era of real treasure hunting expeditions that remain unsolved mysteries to this day. And and when I was researching, I also found that he traveled with his younger brother, John, 1 year younger. And they both braved the open seas and the Atlantic together. And when they arrived in Arequipa and they met the Rodriguez family, um, the Rodriguez family, they were very, very wealthy. And the next day was a big bullfighting tournament. And the Irish brothers have never seen a Spanish bullfighting tournament. And so they invited them to the match. And they had box seats, front row seats. And one of the stories that came out was that my great grandfather, he was so excited during the bull matches that he was jumping up and down, up and down. And then he just leapt over that wooden railing and he landed in the dirt of the arena and fought that bull. And one of the most dramatic passes that he made with the bull going right underneath his cape, he turned to my grandmother and my great grandmother in the stands, and he flashed her, a dazzling smile and be like, "Hey, look what I can do!" And right then, the bull turned his horns and impaled my grandfather in his side and his thigh, hooked him, launched him into the air, and then boom, he hit the floor. Well, the medics came right to his aid and they were able to stop the bleeding and stitch him up. But he couldn't go into the Amazon the next day like they planned because he had deadly wounds. And so my great grandmother, Eudocia, stood by his bedside and became his nurse over those weeks. And that's when they fell in love. But during that time, his younger brother, John, went into the Amazon to scout out the map that they had and to build bonds with the local tribe members and see if, the map was valid or not. And during John's time in the Amazon, he actually fell in love with a tribal lady. and he was head over heels, and he decided to live his life in the Amazon with her in the tribal village. And they fell in love, they got married, and they had two daughters that they raised in the heart of the rainforest. And I think that has something to do with my great grandfather's demise because when Uncle John split up and he decided he already found the treasure of his life and he wanted to stay with the tribals in the Amazon, my great grandfather Robert had to go in and do this by himself, the expedition. And since he was by himself, we and he disappeared. We don't know what happened to him. And at that point in time, when he never came back and John was in the Amazon somewhere, we lost all contact with our Irish side of our family. We didn't know how to contact him. The main contact was Robert. And so that's where our family hit the wall right there. Our family history stopped that lineage. And so it's close enough to me, my great grandfather. So my grandmother was his daughter, right? And it's close enough to me that I've heard these stories growing up, but it's also far enough away where at that time, you know, having those addresses, having the names of people that are distant in foreign lands of other ancestors, all that could disappear so quickly. So, the story that my grandmother asked me to write was not just a family memoir. It was a historical fantasy with a foundation of real mythology, real geographic, real treasure hunting, and real blood. The fiction was already built into our history. I just had to find it. So I wrote the Kennedys into the gap that the history left behind. That is what I want you to hear. Every family has a gap, a story that almost disappeared, an ancestor's name who almost was forgotten, a history that sat in fragments for so long that the next generation stopped asking. What if you wrote yourself into that gap? So, what happened was when I said yes, my book, Lost, The Lost City of Ink and Gold, it launched on St. Patrick's Day in March 16th, 2026. And within that single week, that first week that it launched, it gained 75 five-star reviews, all at 100% rating on Amazon. I produced a full cast audiobook with 21 character voices and an original soundtrack. I filmed in location in Ireland, at the Cliffs of Moher, at the Oranmore Castle, the Burn, and the streets of Galway. I built a platform from nothing. I said yes to podcasts I felt unqualified for. I said yes to interviews about a book I was terrified would have no audience. And I said yes over and over again, the way you do when you already have said yes to the hardest part, that first yes to the calling. Because once you say yes to that calling at 2 a.m., every smaller yet yes gets a little easier. A podcast host named Beyond the Draft wrote this after our interview. A violin teacher who answered her grandmother's dream and wrote her family back to life. And Healthy Mind Healthy Life wrote this: somewhere in the middle of it all, you can feel her grandmother smiling down on her. Two strangers that same day both felt her. She came to me at 2 a.m. I made a pot of coffee. I wrote 3 books and a novella. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, I stopped feeling unqualified. I want to leave you with something. There is something waiting for you. A calling, a gap in your family history, or in your community, or in your field, where someone needs you to stand up and say, I will write this story. I will do this even though I feel completely unqualified. I will make a pot of coffee and start. The calling is not waiting for you to feel ready. It's waiting for you to say yes. My grandmother asked me to write her story. I was a violin teacher. I have never written a novel in my life. The calling always knows more than you do. And what I found after this year of writing and saying yes to everything was that my success was not writing a book. It was not writing a fantasy novel or writing down my family's history. What I found was something very unexpected. And I didn't find it until after my book was done, until after I started doing the interviews, until the book started getting into hands of people all around the world, especially my family. And what I found that I did was I wrote a healing for my family. Because earlier I said, when my great grandfather disappeared into the Amazon, our family hit a wall. That's the point where our family crumbled apart. The devastation, the sadness, the what ifs. When is he going to come back? Every single day waiting for him to find word, right? All of that stress and worry and sadness and grief never left our family. And my story picks up when he disappears. And what I did is I used everyone in our family, all the characters in my book are my family names. And I continued that story. And I showed them through the trauma, they had resilience. They started finding humor, banter. They started finding joy in their life, being united as a family. And they were able to reconcile and to find out what happened to our great grandfather and move on with their lives and be united as a family. And that story that I wrote was a healing for all my family because they never got that closure. So the fantasy book that I said yes to ended up being so much more than I ever thought because the calling knows more than you do. And it brought this healing and reclamation to our family that we never got. So if you do feel that calling come to you, make sure you say yes, because it can bring you so much more joy in your life than you ever thought. Thank you so much for listening.
Brigid Kennedy, everybody. Just wow. I tell you what, Bridget, I had you on the Right Path podcast a while ago, and I wasn't sure you could outdo that one. But I think you did today. Do you need a minute?
these are happy tears.
Happy tears.
These are these are happy tears. They are extremely happy.
Awesome. You're amazing. I love what you did. The I do have just a few questions for you. Think you can handle those?
Go ahead. The calling knows more than me. I am stronger than I think, Mr. Rory.
There you go. All right. I love that. Um, the all right, let's kind of just start at the beginning. It's one of my favorite questions to ask is when your grandmother came to you that very first time in your dream. When you woke up and you had that coffee and you started writing, did you have an idea of as to what really had happened, or did it still take a little while for that to kind of hit you?
It was so real. It was very real, very intense. And and I knew that she came to me and she had a specific mission for me. I just didn't know exactly what that mission was. Um, I knew I had to write the story, but I had no idea that I was going to then write the story beyond the point when my grandfather disappeared, because that was all the knowledge that we had. And so my main protagonist is Kat. And and my grandmother who came to me is Catalina. She wanted me to write her story. And so in actuality, she was only 9 months old when her father disappeared. So she had lived this whole life wondering, right? Unknowing, only heard fragments and everything. And I think she wanted that extension of the story. She wanted to see what I could do. She wanted to see um, how I can bring the family back and give that type of closure. I just didn't know exactly that she was asking that until it just started happening. And it was like a movie playing out in my head. The whole film. I would talk to the characters in my head and I would see it so clearly. I would taste what the air would taste like. I could feel the wind. The sun being so shaded by the canopy, every single little sense, the way that the siblings would banter with each other, the way siblings are with each other. There's always a supportive sibling, there's always a nitpicky sibling, a stronger sibling, a quiet sibling, and that sibling you just want to take by the throat and just like shake, right? And I saw all of that playing out in my story in my head, and it was almost like it was being downloaded in, and I was struggling to catch up writing, and I didn't know where my writing was going. It flowed here and there, and I was just struggling to keep up with it all. It was it was it was something greater than me, and it still is something greater than me. And I was actually on a very interesting podcast the other day, and she asked me before we started, she said, "Can I draw cards?" I looked at her and I was like, what do you mean draw cards?" And she goes, "Well, they're kind of like tarot cards, but not really, spiritual cards. Would you mind if we do a reading?" And I was like, "Well, I've never done anything like that before. Um, sure, let's go for it. Let's go for it." And she goes, "Well, you're gonna have to ask me the question first." And I was like, "Just any question?" She goes, "Yeah." So I kind of got quiet and I thought about a question that maybe the universe wanted me to ask. And I told her, I was like, "Well, my grandmother woke me up at 2 a.m. with this mission, and now here I am. Almost done with all the books, and I'm trying to get the word out into the world." And so I asked, I was like, What what does my grandmother think right now? Is she smiling down upon me? She drew three cards and they all came back like a heavenly card, a card with ocean blue. And if I open this door behind me right now, you're going to see that ocean blue behind me. And it was just all connected so much. So,
Wow.
so yeah.
Wow. Um, all right. When I'm sure I'm sure she's quite pleased with the work. So and I know that you know that too. So that's wonderful. The everyone in the family in a situation like this, you have this sort of unfinished business in the family, and I'm sure that everybody in the family has their own sort of theory or thought or idea, as to what may have taken place. Um, some maybe
Oh.
not. Maybe everybody's just like, hey, none of us have any idea. But when you started, doing what you're doing, what was the reaction from family were they like, hey, this is great. We're so glad someone's pursuing this, or were they like, hey, maybe you shouldn't touch this because it's a sore spot?
It was a fantastic family contribution. I had aunts and uncles that I haven't talked to in years that were writing to me, calling me up, and telling me, "Oh, I know this story, and I know this story. You got to put this into your book." And it was a big blessing, right? So even the act of making the story brought the family even more together. And so that was an amazing thing. Um, and I, like I said, I did put all the names of like the family members in there and to honor them somehow. Um, and and there is one family though that I haven't gotten permission from, and it's Uncle John and his family in the Amazons. We still don't, to this day, we don't know how what they're doing, where they are. Are they still in the heart of the rainforest? We still don't know about that side of the family. And I just hope that one day, I did get to go to Ireland here recently. I did grow up in Peru back and forth summers every summer to go visit the family. So I do know Peru, but when I went to Ireland, that was special. But now as an adult, I do want to go back to Peru um, because I think it's going to hit a little harder. As a child, you don't know you're on a plane in a different country, right? But as an adult, you can know the impact that your ancestors can have onto you. And I felt that in Ireland. So I want to feel that as well in Peru. And maybe I will take my book because I do know that the Amazon company probably doesn't deliver into the Amazons. So I'm going to take my book and I'm going to hand deliver it into the Amazon. And hopefully, maybe I will find Uncle John and his daughters and their children, their family someday and be able to deliver his brother's story
It's
to him.
wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, bring a few copies. Yeah, with you
Yes.
for sure. All right. Obviously there was a ton of healing that happened,
Mm.
not just with you, but with your family over this entire saga. Does your family kind of understand now um, how much healing they all went through, or is it kind of trickling in and hitting everybody, a little bit at a time?
It is hitting everybody a little bit at a time, but especially through the podcast and just talking and connecting to people and seeing other people's vision on it. So it was a New York best-selling author that looked at my story and she said, "This isn't fantasy. This is reclamation." And that's when I stopped. And that was the first time I saw my story through someone else's eyes. And it struck like lightning into my soul. It just rang so true. And I was like, I never thought about that. And the more that we're seeing it through other people's eyes, the more we're seeing how much healing it was. So it's almost like I wrote this story for the community of my family, but it took the community outside my family to show my family how much it meant. It's full circle on that.
All right, I love it. Well, I do have one more question for you, but before I hit that one, make sure you tell everybody how they can reach you, websites, how can they find the book, the whole bit.
Yes, so everything's at Brigid Kennedy Books. So my personal website, brigidkennedybooks.com. You can get the links to buy Lost through Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Kindle, Kindle Limited, Apple, Balboa Press. I also have my personal audiobook on there, and since I am a professional musician and violinist, I did my own soundtrack and theme music to it. So it's really something special. It's very cinematic. Um, Audiobook in there. And also I do highly encourage everybody go to my YouTube channel, Brigid Kennedy Books at YouTube, because I'm doing a fantastic author series where I am reading every chapter in this book. So you hear it through my voice, and then we go through each chapter, and I will tell you all the behind the scenes and weaving and how I wove these threads through and which ones to pay attention to and all the little Easter eggs and what I took out of the first drafts and what I kept in. And also, also on there, I show my true family history and the photographs that we do have as the chapters go by and talk about certain characters. And I do a special thing, like I said earlier, I see like a movie reel as I'm writing. And I actually did a cool thing with AI where I take you into my head and you can see those very same character talks that I'm talking in my head with. So it's a cool little journey with that, something AI is good for. So yeah, go check that out on YouTube at Brigid Kennedy Books.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Last question as we bring this to a close and let you go. You spent quite a bit of time talking about your calling and how, when the calling is smarter than we are, things like that. So, and you spoke very eloquently about it. There are so many folks out there. Our audience is largely made up of speakers who are gaining experience on stages and who are aspiring speakers and that type of thing. If they're receiving their calling and maybe they're missing it, how do you know? How did you know? How can they know if what they're trying to do in their life right now is their calling or not?
I have a very special gift that I've recognized through my growing up, especially my older stages, uh, that I thought everybody had. And I have the ability to like meditatively like go quiet, to calm myself. Um, every thought just clears out of my mind. Absolutely no thoughts are occurring. Um, and it's just like a settling peace that I have within myself. And I thought everybody could do it, but I guess not. I've always heard people like, how can you stop thinking? And I'm like, just like that. Um, but when I'm in that calm state, that's where I hear the callings. And my grandmother's calling was very different. I mean, she was in my room, standing over me, her voice, her face, and I mean, she told me what to do, right? That was very clear calling.
Right.
Like you cannot look at your loved one when they're looking at you like that and say no. I mean, it's like, yes, ma'am. Um, but I've had other callings in my life, and they were very different. It was I would consider it a masculine voice, and it was very calm, and it was like one or two words. And I know that if I was busy, nervous, with anticipation or anxiety or like things going in my head, I would not have been calm enough to listen to it. Whether it's my guardian angel, whether it's a higher being, I'm not particularly sure, but every time I follow it, I never went wrong. So I do have that. So your question was, how do you know it's a calling? How do you know when to follow it? How do you know what they're calling to? So for my grandmother, it was very clear. It was very clear what she wanted me to do. Uh, no ifs, ands, buts about it. She wanted me to write our story. I think if I did not answer any of the callings, I think it would sit. and nag at me and become a festering feeling, like there's something I'm not doing, something I should be doing and I'm not doing. I like just like this busy festering feeling. And I think I would have to calm myself in order to finally hear it. So maybe a meditative moment may not hurt people from time to time. Maybe that might just be what you need to hear your inner calling and to figure it out. But I did do this really interesting meditation one time, and it was an author meditation, and it was done by Hay House Publishing Books for an author creative thing, and it was a meditative experience about walking into a library and then walking down the rows of the shelves and keep going lower and lower into the lower levels of the library and keep going down and keep going down. And you just keep getting calmer and calmer and calmer until you're at the very blackest part of the library. And then there's a light, a single light. And you had to kind of look and let whoever's holding that light for you, let them develop in front of you. And then that is your spiritual calling. And it'll come in full form. And it was a beautiful thing. So I do like meditation. So if you can't hear your calling or you don't quite know what it is, maybe try some meditative stuff. It always works for me.
Love it. And I never know what kind of answer I'm going to get from you. So I love that. That was wonderful.
I
Uh,
wander. I know
it's
I wander.
well, and I don't prep you for any of the questions. I always pull them out of left field too. So I mean, you're doing a great job, honestly, of knocking them out of the park. So, Brigid, thank you for coming on, for doing such a wonderful talk, and letting everybody who's listening know what it is you're doing, what you've been called to do, what's out there for them, and just setting a great example on how to give a very, very nice, very emotional, very authentic talk. It was wonderful. And I love that you gave of yourself today doing that. Thank you for being on our show.
Now I'm gonna need like a walk on the beach or something.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. All
Thank you,
right.
Rory.
Folks, Brigid Kennedy. And that has been another spectacular episode of Step Up to the Mic. Folks, if you're an aspiring or a current speaker and you want to bring your talk to the masses, message us today. Never stop talking and let us help you to step up to the mic.